Okay. Welcome to this first meeting of the Joint Cabinet Stroke Executive Committee of Stratford-on-Avon and Warwick District Councils on Wednesday the 14th of April 2021. I'm Graham Leach. I'm the Democratic Services Manager and Deputy Monitoring Officer for Warwick District Council. For clarification for those members of the public watching, this is a joint council committee where there are 3 representatives from each council appointed to the meeting. There are also a number of observers, councillors present, and also a number of officers as well. To enable the public watching watching online to see who is present, I will now call on each councillor's name who is a member of the committee in alphabetical order in order for them to confirm they are present. And at that point, I will also record apologies and substitutes as appropriate. So at this point, I will start with Councillor Cook from Warwick District Council.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Day from Warwick District Council.
Present.
Councillor Hales from Warwick District Council.
Present.
Councillor Jennings from Stratford-on-Avon District Council.
Present.
Councillor Pemberton from Stratford-on-Avon District Council.
Present.
And then Councillor Shenton, who's substituting for Councillor Parry from Stratford District Council.
Present.
Thank you all. So the first item of business on the agenda is the appointment of chairman of the committee, who will take the chairmanship of the committee until it next meets. Please, can I have any nominations for that? I can see Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Graham. I'd like to nominate Councillor Andrew Day to chair.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? I can see Councillor Jennings indicating and Councillor Hales. Do I have any other nominations? I can see no other nominations. Therefore, is there anybody who would vote against that proposal? No? In which case, I shall hand over to Councillor Day as chairman of the committee.
Thanks, Mr. Leach, and thank you, colleagues, for that vote of confidence. I approach the role with some trepidation. This is a major undertaking and an historic undertaking. In coming together, our 2 district councils, we're recognising that there is a distinct and particular place in South Warwickshire that is reflected by not only the lives of our residents, but the way in which our business is done and the way in which we relate as communities. This local plan is going to be historic in formally setting out our shared ambitions for the future. It will, as most local plans do, I understand, require us to work very hard to find common ground and to remember those things that bring us together and not just those things that are particular or parochial to our own wards or our own parts of the greater South Warwickshire area. And in that endeavour, I am delighted to step into the chair for as long as you wish me to begin this important process. And I'm grateful for the quality and calibre of the councillors that have been nominated here to serve on this committee. I think it reflects the importance that our respective councils give to this task. And I thank our officers also for bringing before us today these reports to begin this work and the support we've had from our executives and chief executives in resourcing and making this happen as quickly as it's been possible. So that with no further ado and no more speeches from me, I wish to get underway with the agenda as set out. And in this meeting will be supported by the Chief Executive of Stratford-on-Avon District Council, David Buckland, Deputy Chief Executive and Monitoring Officer at Warwick District, Andrew Jones, Phil Grafton, Head of Law and Governance and Monitoring Officer at Stratford-on-Avon District Council, Phil Clark, Head of Development Services from Warwick District Council, and John Careford, Policy Manager, that's for Enterprise Housing and Planning at Stratford-on-Avon District Council. So that the members of the public watching are aware, as indicated by Mr. Leach, we also have a number of councillors observing the meeting. They are Councillor Milton as the Chair of Warwick Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Councillors Bode, Davison and Mangott as observers from the Liberal Democrat, Green and Labour groups respectively at Warwick District. Councillor O'Donnell as Chair of the Stratford-on-Avon Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Councillor Jund as Liberal Democrat Group Observer from Stratford-on-Avon Liberal Democrat Group. Councillors and officers, before we go any further, and following the death of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, I feel it is appropriate that we pause now for a minute's silence to pay our respect to him accordingly. Thank you, councillors. The next item of business is apologies, and we note that we have apologies from Councillor Parry and that Councillor Shenton is acting as a substitute for Councillor Parry at this meeting. Moving right along then, item 3 is declarations of interest. Councillors, please can I ask for any declarations of interest that you wish to have?
I can see nobody indicating, Chairman. Councillors, I fear at this moment in time we may well have lost Councillor Day. I think his internet connection has dropped. So we should just pause for a moment. CJ, could you put up the pause?
Thank you. Apologies for the break in transmission there. We are at item 3, which is declarations of interest. And councillors, can I ask if there are any declarations that need to be made and recorded in the minutes at this time? Mr. Leach, are we seeing anyone indicating?
I can see nobody indicating, Chairman.
Very good. Therefore, there are no declarations of interest to record. And moving on then to item 4, which is the main item on the agenda, which is the South Warwickshire Local Plan Scoping Report. This outlines the work that's been carried out to date by both councils to prepare a local plan for South Warwickshire and to seek agreement to undertake a scoping and call for sites consultation. My intention is to seek comments from the scrutiny chairs and observers first, before providing the opportunity for the committee, of course, to speak. And then I'll come to the two portfolio holders, that's Councillor Cook and Councillor Pemberton, to summarise before taking a vote on this item. So if I may, turn first to the scrutiny committee chairs and Councillor Milton to begin. Councillor Milton.
Thank you, Chair. And can I firstly start by thanking John Carefoot and Phil Clark, along with Councillor Cook, who came and supported at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for Warwick District. There's clearly a lot of work has gone into this report, and I think committee were impressed, if probably occasionally slightly overwhelmed by the amount of technical detail that we were dealing with. But John and Phil were very patient with many of the questions that we were asking. There are a number of things that the committee wished to provide as advice. They are mentioned here as recommendations. I think in truth they are advice to the committee and to the project in terms of things that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee would like to see. And they broadly fell into items of procedure, so in terms of how we go about this exercise, and also a couple of areas of policy as well. So if I could go through the recommendations we came up with. Firstly, it was the document should make it clear the plan is being developed at a strategic high level, and that certain local plan policies, so houses in multiple occupation, student accommodation, etc., will continue to exist unaffected. We felt that was important, particularly in terms of some of the areas that residents are interested in. That all questions asked in the report should be reviewed to take into account the audience they were aimed at, to ensure wherever possible plain English is used. And we were particularly aware there were some technical areas where technical language is required. That in respect to affordable housing, there was a need to look at the housing needs within the district to ensure that an appropriate policy is adopted. The position relating to gypsy and traveller sites should be addressed more clearly, because we know this has been a challenge for us previously. That the council should aim for a plan in which all new housing should be required to be carbon zero, and that there should be effective engagement with parish councils, and that they understand any impacts on their own parish neighbourhood plans. So we were particularly aware there are a number of parishes going through the neighbourhood plan process at the moment. And finally, to I think assist in giving direction, that analysis of responses should ensure that they build an understanding of the distinct views of the different interest groups. So we will have interest groups like developers, parish councils and members of the public who may come at this from different angles. So it was important to ensure that that is reflected in the way that the feedback is analysed. But otherwise, those were our comments, and we were very grateful, as I say, to the officers for their work and the support that they gave in the meeting.
Councillors, I have a very concerned feeling that we appear to have lost Councillor Day again and his internet connection. CJ, would you mind putting it on hold again, please?
Thank you, Councillor Milton. If I could now turn to Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor O'Donnell, for comments from scrutiny.
Chairman, I don't believe Councillor O'Donnell's actually in the meeting.
Perhaps Susan could pick
Apologies,
that up
Chairman,
as the
not-
Vice Chair of OSC, David.
Thank you, David.
Councillor Juned, would that be okay if you could comment?
Yes, I don't have the outcome from the overall scrutiny particularly on it, but I did want to raise a couple of questions anyway on it, if you don't mind.
Of course.
The affordable housing, exactly the comment that was done from the Warwick District Council overview and scrutiny. It should be based on need. We've had a problem where up till now, affordable housing has been provided off the back of market housing, which does not always provide the housing where it is actually needed for family reasons and other reasons. So I would back that one. The second one that I would want is, because climate change is such a central part of the next local plan, I wonder, and I would like to take advice from officers really, that we have looked at the basis of judging climate change under the National Planning Policy Framework. I wonder whether it would be worth mentioning that there are the Planning Policy Framework. It is legislation, but it's guidance in effect. But there are other bits of legislation that are particularly strong on climate change, and I wonder whether we should mention them. And that is the Climate Change Act 2008 is one, and the other one is the climate change section of the Planning and Purchase Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, as it was updated in 2008. I just feel that if we could name the bits of legislation that we might also have to comply with, it would strengthen the argument that we want climate change to be central to the local plan. But that is for the officers to guide me on that one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Juned. And if I may, before I turn to the group observers for their comments, I just seek guidance and advice from our officers. And if I could turn to Mr. Clark initially, just on those reference points, and whether that's something that we could pick up in the papers as we go forward.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, it is. One of the recommendations before the committee today is to allow the portfolio holders, in conjunction with myself and Mr. Careford, to make any sort of minor amendment, non-consequential amendments to the document, and that would be that. It's a sort of a reference point just to put down a marker. And insofar as obviously that legislation is able to guide and support what we do in terms of climate change, we're happy to refer to it.
Thank you very much. And just turning to you, Mr. Careford, are you in agreement there? Does that consistent with what you'd wish to see happen as well?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Very good. Then let's move on and ask our group observers for any further comments in addition. Councillor Bode.
I believe that Councillor Bode has not arrived at the meeting, so you can move on.
Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've been fortunate enough to be on the advisory group and at the Warwick District ONS, and I would like to compliment the officers and portfolio holders about the work done so far. A lot has been done, which is great. The direction of travel seems to be good, and so far there's been consensus among members, which is also pleasing to see. Clearly the tough decisions, for example, regarding climate emergency and so on, will be coming later. At scrutiny, there was consideration about who the respondents would be, that Councillor Milton has mentioned already, and about the challenges of wording. And it's an endless debate. It will never be perfect. So I'm confident that the officers and portfolio holders are mindful of that. They'll include appropriate demographic questions, which was the sort of recommendation 7 from ONS, and be careful how they analyse the responses, which will be challenging. So we wish them luck in that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davison. Councillor Juned, do you wish to add further comments beyond the scrutiny response?
No, I actually felt that it was a good document and a good start, and I did, you know, want to say thank you to the officers for the work that has been done so far.
Thank you for those further comments. I'm sure they're appreciated. Councillor Mangert for the Labour Group.
Councillor Nichols is here.
I beg your pardon.
Labour Group. If you want me to speak.
Yes, please. Yeah, as long as we have the views from your group, Councillor Nichols, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Councillor Jonathan Nichols. I'm leader of the District Labour Group as well as chair of the Finance and Audit Scrutiny Committee, Warwick District Council. But speaking as the leader of the Labour District Group, we also think that the principles are right, that it's a well-prepared document, and we thank the officers for that and the advisory group that's helped steer that process. I think our only comment would be about consultation, which means different things to different people. And I think that we do need to make sure that this really is promoted as a consultation of great significance. This, after all, eventually may set the skeletal framework for how the whole of South Warwickshire will be developed until 2050. And I do worry that we're very quick to consult, but sometimes we find that residents think they're being consulted and then don't like the outcome, and even if you consult them again. So I do think the nature of the consultation and how that is run and analysed, as Councillor Davison has said, is actually is a key issue here, and needs some careful thought by the experts in that field.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols. That is a worthy point to note as we progress. If I may now turn to other speakers before coming to our portfolio holders for comments. So other members of the committee, comments, debate. What's your view on this report? Councillor, Mr. Leach, if you could help me, as I cannot see everyone at all. So if others indicating.
You have Councillor Shenton indicating, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Councillor Shenton.
Thank you, Chair. In line with what everyone else has said, in many ways, the work carried out is obviously incredibly thorough, and obviously being prepared by experienced officers who quite obviously know what they're doing, and the steer that they've received from the online events and the approximately 140 stakeholder groups will have obviously helped shape this. I think the fact that this is the first stage in the process, and as it says on page 4, sorry, I was just looking on the screen, and it doesn't make any decisions itself, but it quite clearly demonstrates that as South Warwickshire, we're determined to ensure that the final document bears scrutiny and is robust. One comment I would make, and this probably does support what Councillor Junid was saying, in that we know that new developments are ultimately going to mean an increase in demand for energy, and one way obviously we need to balance that, or could balance that, is by looking at existing housing stock and making those more efficient. But the whole subject of the climate emergency has to be borne in mind to ensure that we have the power generation as much as anything, and that we can minimise the use of that power. On that area of climate in 4.9, it says that within Europe and the UK, the following impacts of climate change are likely to be felt, and these are in the range of 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. Now, I think in my head, I have seen a number of reports that actually challenge whether that is actually a realistic target, and whether we should, if you like, beef this up even more and indicate that it could be higher than 2 degrees Celsius. When we look at the numbers, we've seen that fossil fuels, usage of fossil fuels has increased over the last from 2017 to 2018, and that energy demand in 2018 and carbon emissions has rose at their fastest rate since 2010-11. So those were moving further away from the Paris climate goals, and that was BP that came up with that. So I would like to, if you like, consider whether we change some of that particular wording about 1 to 2 degrees, and whether we should be looking at increasing that. It's a real important issue, and obviously this is one amendment to document that actually everyone will focus on. The need to the need obviously to tackle climate change is urgent, and I think underplaying it or restricting it to 1 to 2 degrees may just underplay that case a little bit. However, I am happy to be challenged on that number of 1 to 2 degrees, and happy for the officers to take a view, and the portfolio holders. I just feel that we aren't in that area. We are outside of 1 to 2 degrees now, and we should beef up this section on climate a little bit if we can. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, I have Councillor Pemberton indicating for you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chairman. Ian makes the point about the balance between mitigation and adaptation, and that is a live debate amongst both authorities, particularly around the climate change panel. I'd probably say at this point we're not for amending anything around the 1 to 2 degrees, and I'll explain why. It is the intention to involve the Met Office in part of the preparation for the South Warwickshire local plan. The Met Office have got some sophisticated modelling, which, as I understand it, can take us down to something like 1,000 metre radius, and we can plug in some sensitivities, whether that be 1.5, 2, 3, 4, whichever number you wish. And we had originally a meeting scheduled for Monday the 19th, but because we have full council, and I think colleagues in Warwick also have other meetings, that's been put back. So we would both Councillor Cook and I and the officers are absolutely clear that climate change runs large through this plan. It is to pull something from the MPPF, the golden thread. We need to have the science behind us. A number of us feel that 1.5 degrees isn't achievable, but until we get anything around the science, and particularly support from the Met Office, I think it would be unwise for us to start moving those. This is the first high-level scoping document. Climate science itself is moving, and it is fairly likely that by the time we get to this point next year, the science itself will have moved. So I'd probably be in the position of saying I would prefer to leave it as it is, particularly until we get the start of this kind of work, and we are aiming to engage with the Met Office for that modelling to support us around that. But Councillor Shenton's point is well made about the need to be flexible around ensuring that we do address the climate change issues that face us all.
So, thank you, Councillor Pemberton. If I may, just raise from the chair 2 points that occurred to me before returning to the portfolio holders to bring forward the recommendations. The first is that the climate emergency and our capacity to address what will be a moving target over time is going to be driven by the strength and the quality of the policies this plan needs to develop and create. We have very, very clear objectives, both councils do, on this matter, the importance of this matter. It sits, and I see it sits centrally in our work on this local plan. And in my view, that's right. absolutely right. That's what our residents would expect. More particularly, it's what our children and our grandchildren would demand, and nothing less. Now, have I gone and frozen again?
I can assure you haven't, Chairman, but
Very good.
Councillor O'Donnell is now in the meeting, who's the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at Stratford District Council. It's whether you wanted to bring her in at that point.
I shall. I'll just finish my second point, which relates to scrutiny, Mr. Leach, and then Councillor O'Donnell, I will come to you, if I may. My second point then, beyond the importance of the climate emergency, is actually the view of this group on how we're going to manage our scrutiny process and do so effectively and efficiently. And in separate conversations, I'd welcome view from portfolio holders in a moment as to whether or not we should in fact embark upon a joint scrutiny process rather than taking it forward separately with the two councils. I appreciate some of the logistics on that. We would need officers' advice, guidance and support on how best to do that. But I would like to put that to this group, and so that it's there for the portfolio holders maybe to comment on when we review their recommendations. So returning back, if I may, on scrutiny matters, Councillor O'Donnell, if I could ask you to comment on Stratford's Scrutiny Committee deliberations.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I do apologise. I completely lost this fascinating meeting just at my moment to come in and join you. So I'm so sorry about that. Tech is fab when it works, but otherwise can be a tad irritating. So first of all, yes, we had a presentation around this item at our last Overview and Scrutiny meeting, and we would like to express our thanks to the officers for the considerable amount of work that was undertaken. At the committee, we had a robust discussion and we agreed with the recommendations that had been put forward as outlined. And moving forward, we advised that the lead officers would liaise with the portfolio holders across both Stratford and Warwick District Council. And it's after consultation going to be coming back to us, and we look forward to reviewing it then. So that's where we at Stratford were up to around the scoping project.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Donnell. And just your views, if I could, that point I raised about joint scrutiny, what's your view on that? And if I may, Mr. Leach has come in. Mr. Leach.
Yeah.
I think, yes, I'd like to know the advice around the logistics. I think moving forward, because the closer working between the two authorities, it would make sense, most definitely, not to be duplicating work. Mm-hmm. So I think it's something we definitely need to investigate and look into the logistics and how it would work.
And could I turn to Councillor Milton, your views on that thought, and then I'll come back into the main committee. Councillor Milton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it is something that we would like to give some consideration to, and we are having a similar discussion around the proposed merger work as well, and the effectiveness of joint scrutiny and how that might help us. I think that the challenge will be partly logistical, but it will also be to ensure that actually we are representing the views of the residents that we represent as well in the right way. So we'll have to find the right formula to scrutinise this effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Leach.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to remind you all that actually at your respective full council meetings, you agreed to investigate this after annual council in May, right. And that will be led forward by the chairs of the respective scrutiny committees once they're appointed. So right. that piece of work is already in process to happen. So
good, that's helpful guidance. Thank you, Mr. Leach. Councillor O'Donnell.
Yes, it was just to make the point and actually to echo what Councillor Milton has said, that it is important whilst we're scrutinising that we do reflect across our varied district the views and wishes of our residents. So it was just really to echo what Councillor Milton says, that across our diverse and wonderful district we do reflect the wishes and needs of residents through our scrutiny, which is such an important facility within our establishments.
Indeed, thank you very much. Now, if I may, I'll turn to our two portfolio holders. Councillor Pemberton, would you like to lead off?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the officers for the work that they have done so far in bringing this high level first scoping document, which is what we're considering today, to this committee. And I would like to place on record my thanks for the work that Messrs. Cook and Careford have put in to this. Make some observations. Just to confirm that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at Stratford was comfortable with the notion that for final editorial and minor changes, that the two lead officers, in conjunction with the two portfolio holders, myself and Councillor Cook, could do that kind of additional top and tailing work as appropriate, which is quite a pragmatic approach to making sure that the document that gets out is absolutely right, and is there was mention of consultation. I think I wouldn't talk about consultation, I would talk about informed consultation. We have to ensure that all our residents across both Warwick and Stratford districts, all of the other key stakeholders, engage in informed consultation, because informed consultation gives you the best opportunity to have informed and clear responses. And I'm a simple Brummie boy, and with Councillor Cook, we have laid the challenge to our officers about ensuring that the document and any subsequent documents and any website material is absolutely clear, and I'll be approaching it on the basis that if a simple Brummie boy can understand it, then we'll be fine, and jargon is banned. So just to give members of this committee clarity and comfort, the document will absolutely be tailored to its audience. So that's a really important piece. I would just make an observation about, really it's not so much about the housing, but it's about housing and how it taps into climate change. For the benefit of colleagues across in Warwick, members in Stratford will have heard me say more than once about the importance of climate change, and in real terms, if we talk about housing, my starting point is passive housing. Now try and negotiate us down from that. So absolutely to give that comfort, confidence and assurance that we are looking for absolutely the very best. This is probably the principal policy lever that these two authorities, as we currently stand as two authorities, have to shape climate change outcomes from now until the middle of the century and beyond. How we build, how we develop, where and what those communities look like, that is, if we don't get that right, going forward, we stand no chance. So it is absolutely the key lever. So members, I would recommend the recommendations to you all. This is a very, very good first step along the way of consultation. There will be other consultation processes, and we will ensure that every voice is heard. And there will be difficult decisions to make, but we will make those difficult decisions when they come to with the best evidence base possible and with the interest of our residents. So on that, I will give way to my colleague, Councillor Cook. I would say that at a practical level, finally, joint overview and scrutiny processes. We've got smart people in the room in our offices, and we have members who are clear about their responsibilities to ensure all residents are engaged. But if it can help save us 6-9 months in the whole process by having joint scrutiny, it's worth doing at least for that. But I do think it would be a good first test bed for joint approaches by taking a joint scrutiny view of the plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Councillor Cook.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First thing I'm going to say, because I hate disagreeing with Darren Pemberton, as he well knows, but I would just like to say that I didn't actually write this, because he said thank Councillor Cook for writing, help write the thing. John Careford and Phil Clark were the authors, Darren. So 1-0 to me on that one. But seriously, can I just make this point to start with? This is very early days. It is really very early days. If I could just go back a little bit, when Councillor Day in 2019 said, look, perhaps we should try and do a local plan jointly with Stratford. When he first said that to me, and I think Councillor Pemberton was with me at a meeting in North Warwickshire, where we were having the first of 3 presentations to do from the Planning Advisory Service. Of course, the other 2 meetings of the planning never took place because of COVID. But at the end of the day, it was suggested to me, I think we were driving back in the car, that perhaps we ought to do a joint plan together. So we're sitting here today as a result of that meeting some time ago. But what I'm going to say to you, it is early days. And if you look at the scope and the scoping document, it is very big in scope. I will be honest with you and say I'm not very into jargon, and I'm certainly not into some of the technical stuff that's in there. And, you know, this is the point, the thread that Darren and I have both discussed, is that we have to remember documents relating to this very, very important subject need to be tailored to the audience. Now, I accept when documents are going to planning officers and architects, that's not necessary, but remember, we're doing this for the people of South Warwickshire. We need to make sure that the documentation we send them engages them. And I think Darren and I, when we met with the 2 principal officers on this recently, we made it clear we think that you should make sure that the public as a whole, you should test it, if you like, with the public to make sure that the questions and the comments that we're making are understandable. Phil Clark at Warwick will know that I sort of fine him £10 every time. No, it's not quite like that, but I call him out if he goes off on an acronym or some sort of thing that I don't understand. And you know, I'm not very good at it. I suppose I'm getting a bit of an old boy now, and I don't remember what half of them mean. But at the end of the day, we do have to think about that. Let's talk about climate change for a moment, if I may. We are fortunate in both in Stratford and at Warwick. We have the services of Dave Barber, who is basically our joint climate change supremo, and he there's nothing that's going to go past Dave, and indeed Alan Reid, who is the portfolio holder at Warwick District, will be looking very hard with our officers to make sure that all those comments relating to climate change are incorporated, and we will do our best to make this plan the most carbon neutral it can be. Having said that, it isn't going to be easy, and everybody accepts that. The question at Warwick scrutiny, the questions were raised, and Councillor Milton referred to it, is there was a lot of discussion about some of the questions and the way they were phrased, the clarity of them and how easy they were to understand, and indeed who they were aimed at. That question was asked. So I think one of the points that were put forward from Warwick was to have a very close look at the questions, because I think that is right. You know, it goes back to what I just mentioned a few moments ago. When we actually ask the public, we need to make sure we've got the questions right. And I'm not talking about getting the answers the way we want them. Let's get the questions so people can give a fair response to those questions. What has happened in this last week is that Councillor Pemberton, myself, and John Careford and Phil Clark have now started a series of regular meetings where we get together to discuss some of the issues. Obviously, one of those issues that we discussed at that meeting was the position relating to scrutiny. So I'm coming on to what the chairman asked for. It's quite clear to me we have to consider, is it really necessary to have everybody repeating the different scrutinies? And quite clearly, to my mind, we are in this together, for better or for worse. since I was a wedding photographer, I'm getting into the sort of words that are used at the wedding ceremony. But the truth is that is the case. We are in this together, and we need to share, and we need to work jointly. And I do think that also applies to scrutiny as well. So I do think I'm grateful that Graham Leach, who I spoke to earlier today, he reminded me of the fact that a decision has already been taken after the scrutiny chairmen are in place in the new session, that this matter will be dealt with coming forward from the relevant scrutiny chairs. So I'm grateful for that. One of the things I'm also, there is pressure. I mean, you know, we've only just started the plan, but there is pressure on relating to how quickly we can get this done. I think Councillor Pemberton would like it done yesterday, so he could get into the TARDIS and go back a bit and give us some more time. But at the end of the day, we have got to do it quickly, but we've also got to do it right. Seriously, I am not one who is going to try and rush this through and then make mistakes that we later live to regret. So that's where I am on this. I think it's an exciting time. I was told when I became portfolio holder for development at WDC that my latter part of my term would be spent on doing the local plan. I've spoke to a predecessor who's also done the local plan at Warwick, and I think I will eat, live and drink this local plan in the next couple of years. But I do commend it to you, and I formally second the proposal from Councillor Darren Pemberton.
Thank you, Councillor Cook and Councillor Pemberton. Committee members, fellow councillors, thank you for your debate on this item. We now have a properly constituted motion before us, and the debate's concluded. So I would ask Mr. Leach if he would take a vote so we can proceed. Mr. Leach.
Thank you, Chairman. In my time-honoured tradition from meetings at Warwick District Council over recent months, I'm going to work in reverse alphabetical order just to keep everybody on their toes. So I'll be starting with Councillor Shenton. I just need to know whether you're for or against the proposal. So Councillor Shenton.
Councillor Shenton, for.
Councillor Pemberton.
Councillor Pemberton, for.
Councillor Jennings.
Councillor Jennings, for.
Councillor Hales.
For.
Councillor Day.
For.
And Councillor Cook.
For.
Clearly
that is carried, Chairman. I shall hand back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach, and carried unanimously, which I'm delighted, hopefully the way it will be recorded in the minutes. Item 5 is urgent business, of which there is none. Therefore, as all items on the agenda have now been considered, I declare this meeting closed. And thank you all for your patience with the technology today. And that's why you're not seeing me. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.